Huh? Dig. Hole. Huh? Dirt.
Hey now, and welcome down to KCToyreviews. We are here today with a very exciting review, and that is with Scorpion by Storm Collectibles. And I am very happy to report this is one badass piece, and quite possibly one of the best Mortal Kombat 1/6 scale figures on the market. And if you are at all curious why, well, let's go ahead and fine-comb those details and hold each other's hands, and a little different this time, let's get over here! Alright, so here we are, Scorpion by Storm Collectibles. Now, if you're not familiar, Storm Collectibles does not necessarily cater to 1/6 scale, however, they have done a handful. And personally, I am still sick to my stomach that I missed out on Storm Collectibles Hulk Hogan 1/6 scale. And I wasn't going to make that mistake twice because I do believe these figures will skyrocket in price after the fact. Now you might be saying the World Box one versus this, which one's better? And of course, everything's up to debate. It's all in everybody's personal opinion. However, the proportions on this, the details, the weapons, and the overall look completely smash the World Box one out of the park. And don't get me wrong, I was a fan of the World Box one, but what we have in front of us is now the picture-perfect version. I couldn't imagine another company doing better. Now, the first thing that comes to mind is the joints. Everybody was in an uproar about the joints on this figure, and yes, they are double-jointed, and when they are exposed, they do not look great. Of course, obvious. Had this come out with single joints, it would have been a piece of crap. You would have been so limited on the poses on this thing that it would have made no sense. And then, of course, the other stereotypical obvious debate is, well, they should have used a seamless or Feist body. Well, here's the thing with that. At a price point of $250 already, which indeed is high, had they went with a Feist body on this, my guess is this would have been $300 to $350. Now, at that point, that's up to you. Everything on this is completely removable. You want a Feist body, throw this on a Feist body and shut your mouth. But as far as putting this into a single jointed body just because you're not happy with the exposed elbows is one of the stupidest conversations I've ever heard. In recent memory, there's a couple figures like the Butcher and a few other figures by So-So that's come out with single joints. The Joker by SSR recently, single jointed elbows. It is just very, very hard to get the poses that you see in the pictures with single jointed elbows. And I am happy to report on this guy, once you have them kind of crunched up, you have them in bends and stuff, with the swivels in the top part of the arm here, and then just a big giant ball joint here. This thing is absolutely insanely posable. I'm probably jumping too far into it because this does include a stand, and well, the stand is one of the biggest piece of crap stands I've ever seen in my life. Storm Collectibles. I mean, come on, what's going on here? You're going to include this beautiful piece and give us a Gundam stand? I don't even know what to say. I was perplexed by the absolutely atrocious stand that was included with this guy, but the reason I went on this rant is he stands fantastically without a stand. Awesome articulation right down to the feet and the ankles, and because he's well proportioned and balanced, I had no problem putting him in poses without a stand. With that said, I will always put my figures on a stand. I have kids running around the house. Over time, these things could still fall face first. But ultimately, so far, everything seemed like pure quality from the balance to the proportions to the overall look on this guy. Now, as far as the head sculpt on this guy, I mean, personally, I have zero complaints. Perhaps the only complaint that you could possibly have is that the entire head sculpt is completely sculpted. It is one solid hunk of plastic, and where I'm going with that is it could have had a cloth hood, essentially that black part over his head there. So I think they made the right choice by making everything sculpted. And just those insane white eyes, the paint application on the face mask, the skin, the eyes, the hood is absolutely stellar. Fantastic details, slight weathering throughout, and just overall, it looks really, really badass. I am pretty excited to get this side by side with the Pop Toy Scorpion that's coming out, and that one is based off of the recent Mortal Kombat movie that just came out. The head sculpt, absolutely terrible, one of the worst I've ever seen, but the masked hooded sculpt, which I think that one does have an actual cloth hood on it, will be pretty interesting to see side by side on these guys. You have a movie-accurate Scorpion next to a game-accurate Scorpion. You really can't ask for much more as a Mortal Kombat fan. So I'm not going to spend too much time in this shot. And at the same time, I'm probably triggering all those babies out there right now with the double jointed elbows. But I did want to focus a little bit on the tailoring here. The exceptional tailoring job by Storm Collectibles. Everything is just a very snug fit from top to bottom here. And it's worth noting this is an actual sculpted plastic belt line there, or whatever the hell you want to call that big cloth that wraps around his waist. But that piece is indeed plastic. And as I mentioned before, anybody thinking about swapping this body out, everything moves off of this guy. So basically every single thing that you see on here completely comes off. So doing a body swap out should be rather easy. Putting the swords on the belt here was kind of a pain in the ass. You really had to jam them in those leather pieces there. They are rather fragile in my opinion, so be careful as you are putting those two sword holders in there. And as I mentioned, full articulation right at the ankles, double jointed knees on this guy. So articulation on this figure is absolutely phenomenal. Pretty nice weathering to the feet there. Again, paint applications on the shin guards, the feet, and then the nice tailoring that fits underneath everything is just an absolute stellar job. And as I look at it sometimes, I try to think what's wrong, what could they have done better? I can't think of too much on this figure that they could have done better so far. And just a quick snapshot of the included accessories. Again, can't complain much. You have this big giant fireball that fits on his hand there. So if you want to do a fisted fireball punch, this thing fits nice and snug on the fist and looks pretty badass in my opinion. Good paint application, good weight to it. I'll be honest, I can't tell what's going on with the swords. If they're die cast or plastic, they have absolutely phenomenal detail, but they have some weight to it, and they do feel like they are die cast tipped on there, but at the same time, it doesn't look die cast, so it's kind of a weird, unless they did a paint application to it, but they do have some weight and they feel like die cast. However, these ones don't. These feel more plastic, but again, as you can see, slight weathering. Overall, no complaints on these weapons. And then you have, of course, the very stereotypical, as I said in the beginning of the video, get over here. That was awful again, sorry, but yeah, you have the get over here weapon that pulls him to him, and then lastly, just a few pairs of hands here. So you have these four here, and then of course the two that are on him in shot, which hold the swords. So yeah, I'll just show real quick. This is the stand that I was bashing on. I mean, it's so bright I can barely see it in shot here because it's so clear, but once you see it over the accessories, you can see it does have a waist grabber. The waist grabber is too tight in my opinion, and then the stand just looks awful. I mean, it literally looks like a Gundam stand or stands that they were using for their other figures, but for a 1/6 scale figure that is this beautiful and this perfect so far, and appropriately licensed, why wouldn't you give us a branded black stand that fits with this figure? Crotch grabber nonetheless, because the waist grabber on this thing was ridiculous. I really do think it would put permanent damage into that plastic waist around him. So very disappointed with the included stand. But as I mentioned, he stands well on his own, and getting one off Amazon is what, $5 or $6, so I'm not going to gripe too much about the included stand. And there we have it. Scorpion by Storm Collectibles from the beloved Mortal Kombat series. And I hate to say it, I am old enough to admit I have been playing that game since the beginning. And well, not much has changed over the years, so I probably haven't played every single version, but Mortal Kombat 1 and Mortal Kombat 2 are some of the most beloved games of my childhood memories, and to have this thing in a 1/6 scale format done right is extremely exciting. And I have to hammer on it again. This is probably the best 1/6 scale Scorpion / Mortal Kombat figure now on the market. It might come at a high price point, I'm not gonna lie, $250 seems rather high for this thing, but at the same time, there are zero gripes. I mean, ultimately, it is almost a picture perfect figure. Although I do need to mention and say this, Storm Collectibles putting the hands on and off of this guy with the pegs was one of the worst experiences I've had in the past few years. Recently getting the Mondo Joker where every single hand came with the peg that goes back into the arm piece was an absolute delight to see that they are going that route. This one came with two pegs that you need to fit inside of every single hand. Getting the pegs out of the hands initially was absolutely awful, as if they were almost frozen in there. I needed to get pliers, hot water, everything you can think of to get those things out. So ultimately, switching up poses is a really crappy feeling, you know, getting the pegs and the hands on and off. based off of how hard it was is just a really awful feeling, to the point where I feel like whatever I put him in, I want to now leave him in because it's so hard getting those hands on and off. So dear God, Storm Collectibles, the next figure you have coming in, I am really praying that you guys hear some of the feedback, because I've seen it in the groups. The hands are awful. Figure out a better way to get those things on and off. Make it easier for us to pose him so we can take more pictures and have more fun with this guy. But putting the hands aside, which were awful, and the crappy stand, we have a flawless figure. And I think that's a good time to swing this into a score, because honestly, what comes to mind, what hits me straight in the chest, and what I have felt talking about this guy throughout the review, is a 9.3 out of 10. And you might be saying, oh, you're crazy, those exposed joints, he should be an 8 or a 7. No, you are wrong. The double joints on this guy allowed me to pose him so much easier and so much more pleasurable than any figure I've had in recent memory. And if you get him into the right pose, and he's not just standing there in a museum pose, then 9 times out of 10, those joints are covered up in one form or another. Yeah, we see him from the back as he's spinning, but who has their figures facing the back of us? We're all looking at the front of them. They're all in our cases. And as he gets in front, he looks absolutely phenomenal. The tailoring is spot on. The paint application spot on. We have weathering, just slight weathering right throughout this figure. The proportions are great, and I absolutely love the included body. Good amount of accessories, and balancing him was actually pretty easy. So this is probably one of the most flawless figures I've seen in a long time. I really can't stress enough that this is one badass piece, and at a 9.3 out of 10, I highly recommend it, especially if you are a Mortal Kombat fan. And yes, as we mentioned, it does have a high price point, but I do think this will sell out, and I do think it will cross the $300 to maybe shy of $400 mark in a few years. Now, Storm Collectibles does have Sub-Zero. He is out. He's on the way. I should have the review up for that soon. So can you imagine having these two side by side in your case? The contrast, the look, the feel, and the memories is going to be absolutely phenomenal. So I just wanted to say, Cheesy, thank you, Storm Collectibles. You have done a stellar job with this. I really hope you guys keep up with the 1/6 scale line, because that's all I collect, but seeing what you guys have done here excites me for the future, and I am a fan going forward. But with all that said, we're going to go ahead and sign out. That's it for us here today at KC Toys. Sub-Zero coming up next. Scorpion and him gonna look badass together. Yellow and blue are gonna look great!
Huh?